is you can never overdraw the basics, right? And I think that's the key thing that sometimes I know this stuff, and actually then I'm reminded, well, no, you don't. And let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to the basic questions. Let's always look to go and work and refine the basics, so then the glorious stuff can be fun.
Our ever-changing world calls upon the most courageous, resilient, and relentless of us to face its most extraordinary challenges. To help you embark on this journey, we present the Impactful Coaching Podcast, your oasis for inspiration and a beacon to spark the fires of greatness within you. I'm Joseph. I will be your ally in this journey to empower your potential. Join us each week as we dive deep into the heart of ambition, drive, and success to unravel compelling stories of daring leaders who dreamed, struggled, and achieved victory. Our journey begins now. How's everybody doing today? My name is Joseph, and welcome welcome back to the Impactful Coaching Podcast. As always, it is an honor and a privilege to be able to learn what I can learn, share what I can share, and try to get as many messages out as I can. I'm here today with Elliot Kay. Elliot, you are here to represent speakerexpress.co.uk. First thing before I get to anything else is, how you doing today? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. My son woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'm a bit tired, but otherwise I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Well, thanks for being here. It's only the morning for me, but we had to get up extra early this morning to throw out some old mattresses. So that was a nice way to have my back remind me that I have not been informed lately. I always want to just, if I can, I want to start with something organic, just to kind of like, break the ice and all of that good stuff. So I didn't happen to notice your hashtag bemoregiraffe in the in the Zoom title, which I've never said out loud, so I don't even know what to call that. But what's the impetus for that? Is there like different animals that people are? Is this like an ecosystem that we're talking about?
No, it's not that clever. So
Okay.
if I asked you what do you think Be More Giraffe stands for, what would you say it stands for?
Okay, well, I got to go with the fact that giraffes have a long neck, and therefore they are the ones that observe more. So I think it's the be more observant is my guess.
Good guess. So the neck thing's correct. So Be More Giraffe actually transpired after, was it the first lockdown, second, I can't remember. And basically it was very quiet. And I did a bit of research with our database. What is it you want? What's wrong? And we got all these answers. I want to stand above the noise. I want to stand out. I want to be heard. I want to be authentic. And I've got this giraffe, which is sitting on top of there. And basically I was talking to my marketing girl at the time. And I went, I think people want to be more giraffe. She went, yeah, that's it. That's our tagline. That's our marketing line. And basically, it's about standing out for the right reasons, sticking your neck out, daring to be seen, be heard, and be different. So we call it Be More Giraffe. I even read the book about it. It's behind me, just there.
Oh, wow.
How to Stand Out and Speak and Be More Giraffe. That's my 5th book. And that's what Be More Giraffe is all about. In the context of us standing out, a lot of people know me as, oh, you're the Be More Giraffe guy, or you're the guy that talks about being more giraffe, but I'm not the giraffe guy. Just for clarity, I'm not the giraffe guy. I'm the Be More Giraffe guy. But I'm evolving away from that now. It feels like I'm starting to outgrow that concept a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Just briefly, the image of, and you're going to wonder where I'm going with this association, but when they tried to, they released those Jurassic Park inflatable costumes, I think initially they were supposed to be frightening, but then they realized that physics got involved, and so all of the dinosaur heads would just like kind of lean back, and it turned into a comedy act. And then, as you said, I'm not the giraffe guy. I just tried to picture what they would try to, if they tried to do the giraffe version of that costume, and just have this huge head just on like a 95-degree angle, just flying all the way back. Yeah. Okay, well, let me try hitting you with one challenging question on this, and then we'll shift gears and really dig into what you do and why we wanted to have you on the program. So, because you mentioned standing out for the right reasons, and so the other side of my brain is going, well, what are the wrong reasons? And I think there's some obvious wrong reasons why people don't want to stand out, but where is that a difficult middle ground where people are trying to stick out and maybe their intentions are good, but their actions are off, or actions are good, but their intentions are off? Where do you kind of see the issue or the difficulty there?
When we say stand out for the right reasons, we talk about for being authentically you, right? For what you stand for and the change you want to make. So if I work a lot with experts, so experts in their field, so yeah, coaches, trainers, consultants, but also a lot of entrepreneurs who might be in the recruitment industry or the tech industry, right? And when we talk about standing out, sticking your neck out, standing out for the right reason, it's because you're on mission, you're on purpose, you're authentic. Hopefully, you're not manipulating the industry, you're not standing out because you are corrupt. I mean, that would be the obvious one, right? But even being inauthentic or being, in a way, incongruent, so you're saying one thing and you're doing the other, those are the reasons you don't want to stand out. And, the coaching industry is plagued with that. But we want people to stand in certainty, to use their voice for good, to be real to who they are. So, again, if we're talking about speaking, I'm not about molding you become something you're not. It's about magnifying more of who you are. And that's what we mean by standing out for the right reasons, by being more of who you are. And even yesterday I posted this thing on LinkedIn where it's not about necessarily being a loud speaker, it's about being your authentic speaker.
I want to chamber the thematic discussion about authenticity. I'm gonna leave it just on the table for a moment, just because there's some
Okay.
How do I put this? There's some paperwork that is necessary to the podcast that I want to do. So would you care to share with the audience what brings you here today, what brings you on the program, what you do in the world of coaching?
Yeah, I mean, what brought me here is your kind invitation and your very warm outreach. We also have a philosophy, which is a little bit of stage time, of course, and so whenever there's an opportunity in the right circumstances to spread our word, our message, to impact, to empower, to educate, and to elevate, then we take the opportunity. I don't jump on every podcast that comes my way, but I liked the approach of your team.
Well, thank you for that.
Um,
I realize that the way I asked that question would essentially have been the same answer for every guest in the history of the program so far. So yeah, well, you asked. I'm like, you know what? That's a good point. Maybe I should tweak that a little bit.
Yeah, it's an authentic question.
Yeah.
If we go back to that. But coaching's I'm a bit more than that, right? So had we had this conversation 8 years ago, coaching was my main thing. Coaching's a small part of what I do. I run a series of businesses, but yes, in the space of coaching, what I do is I work with entrepreneurs and experts to help them to either deliver and become world-class speakers, therefore influencers. And I don't mean TikTok influencers, I mean influencers in their industry, right? When I coach, I help speakers or experts market themselves. And also in many other ways, I help speakers get speaking opportunities. But I'm not an agent, I'm not a bureau. Before anyone goes, yeah, could you, no, I can't because I don't want to. But definitely in terms of delivery, right? Again, so they're more of themselves. I help them bring them out so they are world-class speakers. And then the other side is how they market themselves as world-class speakers. That's the core.
Mm-hmm.
But also run an awards company as well. And we're just about to buy another company. So it's more than just coaching, if you know what I mean. There's a big picture at play here.
I don't think I've talked to somebody who's just like, oh, I'm just a pure coach. Was like, you can't do that, can you? You always have to have some stake in the industry. And I think that's true for like university professors. They're never just like pure professors. Okay, maybe not entirely true, but there always has to be some level of involvement in an industry, so that way your experience that is something that you can share with other people. Depending on the nature of the show, we would lean into different areas. My consistent audience appreciates this, is that we do talk about all of the side of it, right? So it's not going to be, the reigning hour isn't just going to be like, oh, what about this about coaching? What about this about coaching? The nature of your work is the most fascinating part. The other area that I always love to learn about is what skills sort of entered with you into the space. And I mean the coaching side of it. And I did notice that in part of your background, you do have experience in dancing. And I am particularly interested if any of your dance training has kind of like transformed and converted into a way that's helped you run your business as it is now.
Yeah, because a long time ago I was a dancer. when I was 21, I decided that I wanted to be a dancer, right? And I pursued that path a bit before that, actually. And I actually went to a dance school and proper, pure dance school, and then graduated, had a bit of a career, about 5 years till I got injured. And that's what kind of set me on this path, typical dancer story, back injury. And I think also, if I knew then what I knew now, I probably would have pushed my career a bit longer, but I didn't quite have the resources then. To answer your question, what have I brought from the dance world into my entrepreneurship or my business building or my coaching? It's definitely the discipline. Timekeeping is one of them. It's one of my biggest things. So definitely timekeeping, respect for time, respect for other people's time. That is definitely well embedded in me. Um, Hard work, right? I think when I say hard work, I know we're kind of also a lot, work smart, not hard. Work 2 hours to get 8 hours impact. There's a lot of work that goes to get to that level, and I think a lot of the industry skips that. That to get to that point where you can work an hour a day, you probably have to build up quite a lot of momentum. So for me, it's that discipline of working hard. It's the resilience aspects. But I think something that's very valuable for your listeners that I've taken from the dance space is you can never overdraw the basics, right? And I think that's the key thing that sometimes I know this stuff, I know this stuff. And actually then I'm reminded, well, no, you don't. And let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to the basic questions. Let's always look to go and work and refine the basics. So then the glorious stuff can be fun, or the shiny penny stuff we can embrace, but we can't do that without the basics, right? If you take back to the dancing days, every day I was still at the bar doing, plies and things like that. And even when I work professional companies, every day we'd work on the basics, right? Your core strength, stretching, certain exercises that were basic. And in a way, as a dancer, you're tempted to go, oh, but I know this already. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so much better than it, right? But you're not. And I think it's the same. That's what I bring to business and to coaching is you can never overdo the basics. You always got to have that learning mindset. That you've always got to be evolving. That the moment you get comfortable is the time that actually you regress, and the moment you have a know-it-all attitude, actually you've closed off. So those are some of the things that I feel I bring from the dance world as well. Definitely not the body, unfortunately, not anymore. That's for sure. I've got a beautiful dad bod. It's very attractive if you like dad bods, but I certainly don't have the six pack and the 28 waist that I had back then.
Of all the episodes, we decided not to do the full body recording.
So you're so lucky about that. So especially as I just come back from America and I've got a bit of a burger body as well. So there we go. But yeah, I think those are the basics. That's what I brought from the dance world as well. And also the other thing I suppose I bring is because I was 21 and I was told I'd never really succeed and I never is defiance. But I think I had that before I went into dance.
I
Depends on how we choose to say
dad.
it.
I think you're usually trying to combine dad and dance, right? Like dad. That's what I thought that you were going there for the wordplay.
No, definitely not.
There was something that I like talking about the concept of muscle memory because, and this is still kind of in the dancing bit, and we'll shift gears afterwards. But for me, once I truly understood how muscle memory sets in, it changed a lot of my view of things because once you are not spending as much energy on the basics, and the more you practice the basics, the less you need to focus on those things when, say, the pressure is on or you're trying to sort of extend your skill set. And I can come at this from some of my minimal acting experience. I'm by no means like a professional actor, but I have some credits. And that there's a first step of like, okay, I got to read the script, I gotta get the context, and then there's memorizing it, and then there's internalizing it to the point now where like it's so ingrained in my brain, it is not going anywhere. And what happens is as those things are internalized, it frees up the space for the mind to have more of that creativity and to do more like the fun things and to have that flourish. Now in acting, obviously you got to stick to the script if the director is adamant about sticking to the script, but you can play with the scene, you can do things with your eyes. There's lots of things that you can do once you kind of have that material internalized. But with dancing, I'm curious, how if there's that free form creativity that the dancer has while still adhering to the form or the choreography.
Again, a bit like a director, depends on the choreographer, right?
True.
So
Yeah.
when I toured with an Irish show, it's very much like hand here, this height, fingers extended, leg this height, and it was very much like regimented. But then I had other choreographers where they give you the concept and they give you the idea, and then as a dancer, you express yourself, and then they'll go, "Yes, let's do that," and then they'll work on that, and then that becomes. So it really does depend. I mean, while you might not have a script, often there'll be, some elements of choreography to learn, and in my experience, most choreographers will allow you to interpret that, but there has to be unified. So
Hmm.
again, that's when they start cleaning up and everybody's the same level, same height, same this, same rhythm, same count. But often in the space I was in, you could interpret and bring your own feel to it. So, and that's what they liked,
Hmm. Actually,
but some hated it.
no, that kind of was getting into what this is more of like a personal curiosity. So I lied. I did have one more question about it, but my girlfriend got me into Korean pop music. That was a year ago, and I still listen to it, and every so often I will also like because I have a YouTube playlist and the videos come up and they're dancing, and I'm like, this is really impressive, but I have to wonder about their happiness, just because I feel like there's because I know how brutal and how competitive that industry is, and the hard part for me is that it does take away some of the enjoyment in knowing how much of the frankly of the suffering was involved and how of the politics and the drama goes on in the background. So I have a hard time disconnecting from that sometimes. Have you ever had that kind of challenge where like because you knowing what you know maybe it elevates the material and you gain more of an appreciation, or it also kind of like taints the ability to appreciate something?
Yeah, that's a good question because
Thank
I
you.
feel like, my wife says this to me. She's a bit like, you never go to dance, you don't go to the theater very often. I'm not anti. I just feel maybe having also because, when I started so late and I fought so hard for it and then I got injured and it took me out of it, I think a part of me is kind of when I do watch, I'm analyzing. I'm going, oh, I wonder if they're in pain. I wonder if this, or oh, how much they go through. So yeah, there is that element to it. When I do watch it, I do enjoy it. There's always a part of me that feels like, oh, that could have been me
Hmm.
as well. But I don't know if it takes away the enjoyment as much as I guess to answer your question, I don't go enough or watch enough. But when I like watch Britain's Got Talent, or because my little girl's into that now, and I'll see it, I do go through what's going through their mind.
Hmm.
And having also been in years where a couple of pop stars in the UK have been, unfortunately, one of them passed away this year, and I know how much he struggled. He was only 46. It has kind of, I know what goes on, right? I know it, but I
Hmm.
see it and I've seen it. And all you have to look at is how few maintain that status and maintain their wealth. And how many of them end up with mental health issues and various addictions and broken relationships, because actually a lot of that industry is built on on falseness, right?
Hmm.
And unless you can work your way through that and hold your own, it's quite detrimental. So I do feel a lot of people that enter it with a dream versus passion, I want to be famous, I want to be big, I want to be the next big thing, I feel those are the ones that fall the hardest. Those who genuinely have a artistic passion, um they either eventually pull away to find their own path or they maintain it. Some of the greats are still about, I mean, I don't like, but like the Rolling Stones, the U2, I like U2, U2, like, because they are general artists who were passionate and they were clever about how they did things. So I think a lot of people fall out of love because they weren't truly in love. They wanted the dream, and the dream is shattered quite quickly
And
for
so
a lot
they
of people.
saw it as a means to an end. Oh, I have maybe
Yeah,
some
and there's
proficiency in
nothing
this, but
wrong.
yeah,
I mean, how many people now want to be TikTok sensations, right?
I
It's
do.
kind of
I
like,
just, I
right, there
mean,
we
my
go, or
friend and I we do
YouTube,
comedy videos on it, like for us just as an outlet. But yeah, no, I wouldn't mind getting an extra
right?
100,000 followers on TikTok for my jokes. But for me, it was just a matter of like I'm choosing how I want to do it, and if it doesn't happen this way, then I'm not gonna curate, or I'm not going to pivot just forget the clout. It's either I get traction off what I enjoy doing or not at all.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's very healthy. But a lot of people will do really dumb things or will do anything to be that viral sensation, right? And again, it goes back to intention, sticking your neck out for the right reason. So if your comedy takes off, and let's say Billie Eilish watches it and laughs, and she decides to share it with her, that happened recently to someone in the UK, right? She did his singing lessons and she shared it, boom, right? Then great. But, there's people, how many times do you see someone dying because they're doing a YouTube stunt and they jumped off a building? It's like, it's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was going to say is, I don't think the dream has changed. I think the vehicle to achieve that dream has shifted now with TikTok or YouTube or, whatever sensation you choose to do. But again, even if you're a YouTube or a TikTok viral, to replicate that is exhausting. That's what a lot of people I know in the content space say, that what a lot of TikTokers find that they eventually kind of burn out, because to maintain that level, you have to have this continuous output that grabs attention, that gets the likes, that gets the comments, and it can be exhausting.
Mm-hmm. And then just to keep up, the quality of the content starts to diminish, and then you're doing videos where you're just like pointing at someone else's video and not even saying anything. Exactly. You just, one thing I'll just say to wrap this up too is that, having done my fair share of background for film and television, that was sort of like where the origin of my question came from. Is okay, now that I know what it goes into making films, it does impact my viewing. But to end on a positive note for this, when I had seen 1917 in theaters, I was just marveled at it on a technical level, because I know how difficult that day must have been for them. The multiple takes must have been, even just for the background actors in a single scene. So nothing but admiration and respect for that, which I think came especially from my particular experience. With that, nice. Wrapped up in a neat little bow. So we have had a couple of speakers or speaking coaches, not that I want to accidentally call all of them the same thing, because even one word can make a significant difference. So what I think is best to do is to give the floor to you and say, as someone who works with other people in the speechcraft space, what sets you and your operation apart?
Me, I'm gorgeous. That's what sets us apart. Of course.
That was self-evident.
Face. How could you even question it, right? What sets us apart? It's a bit like, at the end of the day, what sets you apart is the personal brand and the connection. Am I teaching such different stuff probably from the other people? Probably not. I have structures, I have delivery methods, right? What sets you apart is you, right? And without being a cliche, that's true. How you position yourself, your marketing, your voice, what you stand for. So, there's not too many speaker coaches or speaker trainers that talk about being more giraffe, right? Period. That's one thing that sets us apart. The fact that I'm writing my 7th book about, this one's going to be about executive presence. I just need to write 3 more chapters, and then all the really juicy stuff starts, like laying it out and choosing a cover and, all that stuff. That could be one thing that sets us apart. But, in my experience, what really, and your ability to sell and your desire to sell, right? Could I be doing big rooms and driving people to the back of the room? I could if I really wanted to. I don't necessarily want to do that. If I'm invited, I'll do it. So I think what sets me apart is how I position myself, the Be More Giraffe, the working with experts that speak, that I focus on entrepreneurs, the fact that, I'm far more than a coach, right? That there's the training aspect, there's the coaching aspect, there's the marketing aspect, there's the delivery aspect. That my big picture is to own pretty much the whole of the speaker journey. So when I said there's a big picture at play here, I want to purchase and buy and acquire companies that kind of own the whole speaker journey, from, a Facebook group all the way to an agency. So all of that kind of stuff, that's part of my vision. And I've been around for over a decade. And I think that's another thing that sets us apart, is there's a lot of speaker coaches that come and go. There's a lot of speaker training companies that come and go. We founded this in 2011. I did have a business partner at the time. She's now in Australia. But I think that's another thing that sets us, is the longevity. We've been around. And touch wood, our reputation has been mostly good,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm sure there's one or two bitter people out there that work with us, but overall, and the fact that a lot of circles you can go, people know my name, they know Speaker Express. I mean, no, I don't walk into place and be like, "Oh my God, it's you." I don't get that. But people, "Oh, you're Elliot," or "I've heard of Speaker Express," and especially now we've launched the Speaker Awards as well. A lot more people within the space know of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what sets us apart. Besides this beautiful face, of course. Why are you
I,
laughing?
I appreciate the uh, one thing in particular was also the name Speaker Express. At first I thought, oh, okay, so in terms of like expediency, like, oh, right, because you're expressing yourself. Oh, okay, so there's like the double meaning there. Um,
Double meaning, yeah.
well, could you just take a moment or two and talk about that particular milestone, that tipping point where the people started reaching out to you, you started finding people to work with? What was sort of like the construct of the platform?
Well, I've all okay. Let's rewind. So, Speaker Express been involved since 2011. While Speaker Express was being built, I was running a coaching business as well, and that was my main thing. So it's known as the Coach with a Hat, and I ran seminars called Power to Succeed, and they did really well. So I was coaching in that space. Then what I did is I shifted and I moved more to strategically working with coaches. So the hat came off. I changed brands. And I did that till 2018, where I moved full time into Speaker Express with my business partner at the time, and then raised investment. So I've kind of had this coaching element to me since 2010, where Speaker Express really started taking off because originally Anik, who was my business partner, we just did this as a Wednesday evening once a month. We called it Club Night, where speakers can go and practice. And she did that because she felt that once course is finished, there was nowhere to go practice as a speaker. They do 5-day intensive, boom, where do you practice? Oh, come to Club Night. And then I said to her, I think there's a business here, we should develop it. And I think what happened when we really knew that it was starting to take off is again when people started to recognize Speaker Express. At the time, it's called Pony Express Speakers Club. People were like, "Oh yeah, you the guys behind Pony." But more than anything, it got to that point where our club nights were full without having to work hard to sell. And then the tipping point is when people going, "What's next? Like, what else do you offer?" And that's when, oh, we need a training platform, we need a course, and that's kind of the tipping point. Of course, the other tipping point is when you look in the back and count, and you're like, "Wow, we've done well."
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first year we hit six figures with Speaker Express would have been around 2013 or 14 because Anik had worked on it and I'd worked on it. And there was a just real period where everything seemed to sell out, right? I'm not talking thousands of people, but we do a boardroom of 20, that would sell out. And then we do like a bigger event, a 2-day event, and that would sell out. And it's like, wow, everything seems to be selling out. That was our tipping point around 2013, 14.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you mentioned in that story was the once a month get together, and how giving speakers a chance to just come in and practice. And it's tied perfectly into one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, because I saw on the about page that the experiential learning is the key, right? And especially so for people who are going to be standing on stage and talking to other people. So that sounds to me like the concept of the experiential learning really started from that point and flourished along with the rest of the business also flourishing. So my question and sort of the challenge of this is that unless you're able to pull off like a one-to-one environment where you can actually like fill a room with tens of thousands of people, depending on how many people this person happens to be speaking in front of, how close is experiential learning getting to that true experience? And then like maybe aside from staring down tens of thousands of people, what are those last things that they kind of have to deal with when they're on stage? And we've given you everything we can, but you're on stage, so the rest of it is up to you.
The whole training curriculum we used to deliver was always about the doing, right? So it wasn't like, here's 5 steps to developing a talk. Bye. Each step we would teach, and then they would go, they would learn, and we would glue it together. So all our trainings are hands-on and experiential, right? Because otherwise it's a bit like you can't learn acting from watching a video or reading a book or listening from a talk, right? So it's very like that. It's that whole methodology. So there's various things we do, various activities, various exercises to get people to really feel the moment. And actually, to best equip them with the question you're going with, we would do training around being heckled. So we would set up an environment that they were heckled, a safe environment. We would do hostile interviews. So, things like that. So the tough side, like one of the things we used to do is write the 5 questions you're bricking yourself to be asked. And then we would contrive a situation where they're asked those questions and they have to respond. And I'll never forget one lady who worked with us. It was 2 years later, someone had heckled her, and she said she remembered the training. She stayed calm. She was able to deal with it because of that training she had that day, right? The heckler training. So there's so many things that can go wrong on stage. You'll know this from acting, right? But when you're speaking, it's you. There's no fallback. There's no one can jump in. So that's what you talk about in terms of being able to let go, right? That's level 3. We call that level 3. When I wrote my fourth book, I talk about level 3 confidence, where you're completely in flow, where you're able to completely detach and you know how to arrive where you need to arrive without worrying about the structure, the lights, right? And that comes from time. That comes from experience. That comes from preparation. Practice, practice, practice. Train, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things. Your slides stop working. The mic stops working. The lights go out. As a speaker, you're very vulnerable, really, right? And there's people that take great pride in attacking you, like they do online, except online they're a bit more cowardly because you can't see them and they can hide behind things. And it literally is the training behind how you manage that, right? And that's what's key. Now, just like a football manager or a soccer manager, right? At some point, you need to let the team play. That person needs to learn to sink or swim. They need to learn to manage it, to pick themselves up. And the only thing you can do is at the end, if you're mentoring them or coaching them, is put your arm around them going, well done. Or, that really didn't work. Let's work through this together. One of my clients who ended up on TV a few years ago, MasterChef Professionals, she got massively slammed online because of something she said, right? Massively misinterpreted, but they went after her, and she had to deal with that. All I could do as someone that worked with her, who believes in her, is put my arm around and go, okay, let me help you through this. After that, she had all kinds of processes in place so it doesn't happen again. It's the same with speaking, same with acting. Sometimes you need to bomb to learn to pick yourself up. You need that bad performance to understand what a good performance is, right? Same with dancing, but those days that you are, you're just in your flow, everything lands and everything's funny and everything's good, those are the days I call level 3 confidence. You're completely detached, but you're in control.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely. And having done I did stand-up comedy for about 3 years, and it went well for a total of 11 minutes. And I think one of the things that those not so pleasant experiences do is they do build that camaraderie, because when you don't do good in stand-up, well, the joke is if you don't do good in stand-up, you just say, "Oh, and I'm actually a poet." But what actually happens is it's called bombing. Like you go in and you just nothing goes well, right? And I've had a few pretty bad bombs, and it can feel it does feel isolating. But the concept of it is instilled upon everybody way before it actually happens, for the most part. And so when you get off stage and everybody else who's performed there goes, been there, done that. Yeah. In fact, that was me like 10, 15 minutes ago. So it happens, and it builds that trust, and it helps build that community too. So long as your support network or your peers are not secretly rooting for you to fail.
Yeah. And I think most speakers, unless they're real, horrible people, and they're out there, most speakers will find that 95% of the audience wants them to succeed, right? Even especially if the audience can sense that they're really struggling or they're not doing so well, or most, will go, you can do it, and they'll get behind the speaker.
Mhm.
But if that speaker hasn't built great rapport like a comedian, then that's when they'll turn, right? And I think comedy is a whole different level, right? I think it's a completely different level of skill. I admire comedians, people that go out there to purposely make people laugh. That is hard. I've got massive respect for that. But yeah, we one of our sayings is dare to bomb. You've got to dare to get it wrong to get it right, right? You got to fail to pick yourself up. But I think because with public speaking, a bit like comedy, right, it can be absolutely crippling. The thought of going up in front of people and bombing, that stops people from doing it,
Mhm.
right? I think comedians are just incredible with the resilience they show. And you're right. I mean, I remember going with my friend, and he's a comedian, and he really bombed, got booed off, completely horrible. And the first thing, while I know comedians can be quite, stay out my way, they actually all went to him straight away and said, "We've been there, we've done that. You got another set. Pick yourself up, come back stronger.
Yeah.
You've got this kind of thing." I don't think there's a single comedian that has never bombed. There's been a never speaker that hasn't had a bad day. There's never been an actor that hasn't had a terrible, or a dancer that hasn't. It's like it is part of the journey. You've got to accept that.
And one thing that I'd like to share just from my experience in comedy is I think you do get some people who have that ego where they think, oh, I can do this, but have had no reinforcement whatsoever and just feel like, oh, I'm just funny. I haven't proven it, but I'm just going to go do it. Those are exceptions, but for the most part, everyone who's drawn to it does so because we realize that we can't help but make people laugh. Like half the time that I make people laugh is an intentional joke, but then the other half is just me. It's just the way I deliver a line and not really meaning for it. And the challenge and the beauty of it is trying to recapture that natural dialogue on stage and try to recreate that environment that allows for that laughter to happen in somewhat of an artificial environment when you're on stage on the microphone and lights and everything like that. So it's a very fascinating art form, but you almost see your almost like being called to it more than anything because you realize that we have a unique relationship with laughter. Me, like I said, I make comedy videos on TikTok. I love doing sketches because I get to be very technical about how I put the scenes together. But there's a good chance that at some point between now and the time I die, I'll probably be back on stage. So once the bug bites, it doesn't go away. I wanted to ask about that lady who she knew what she was gonna get heckled over, and then sure enough, that actually happened. And my neurotic brain was thinking like, I wonder if that speaks to her being aware of a pattern that she has, or some kind of like personality matrix that she knew it was going to happen. If there's anything else that you kind of like glean from that, I'd love to hear about it. But like, how did she know what she was going to be heckled by? Was it just law of averages? Was it something that people typically get heckled by? Or was it something about her that she knew she gets attacked by in the past?
Well, it took 2 years before anything. It's not like the first time she stepped on stage, boom.
Right.
She's a sleep expert, so she kind of figured, when we do the 5 things you would hate to be heckled, right? Your typical things are, you don't know what you're talking about, that's like rubbish, who are you to speak about that, right? So the imposter syndrome stuff comes out, but then equally there's the questioning of expertise. So while we go 5 things, then I would push it and go, okay, what are the 5 things expertise wise people can question you on? And she'd practice that. And you get a sense, right? You just kind of know what people might be skeptical about, and therefore that's what she got questioned on. It was the skeptical kind of aspect to it. You know what people might heckle you for most of the time when you're a comedian. That's what you practice, right? You practice being heckled, how to respond to it. Typically you're not funny, you're boring, right? Get off. You remind me of, unless you go down the political route where you start to get heckled for your opinion, or, So if you kind of have a rough idea of that, then you can prepare for it. And when I've done talks, I've prepared for it, and a couple of times it's happened, right? Once when I was doing the Power to Succeed, someone heckled me, "You're not Tony Robbins." I was like, I'm not. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I said to him, if you want Tony Robbins, go down the road, pay £700 and go see Tony Robbins. I'm never going to be Tony. right? So you're absolutely right. And you just kind of learn to deal with it. And again, but it's also how you deal with it. Remain graceful and respectful in a way that you still win over the audience. Again, like heckled as a comedian, you can heckle and lose the audience, or heckle and they get behind you, and you really isolate that person, right?
Hmm.
Um, she just kind of knew what she's likely to get heckled about.
Fair enough. It was part of a long running theme on this where we talk about how people who may have something conscious that they bring as an issue, and then it turns out, well, once we start digging, we actually realize there's something deeper going on. So I wanted to give that a shot just in case I was had an opportunity to continue on with that theme, because I love that theme. There was one other thing that stuck out to me on the website that I thought was pretty cool, because I haven't really seen a version of it, and forgive me, previous coaches and future coaches, in case you guys do this and I didn't see it, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. But the maximize your talk audit, I thought was pretty cool. The idea of being able to like, it's just like, I don't know exactly. I'm bringing it to you to understand how this works exactly. But like, is it looking at the written material, looking at the performance, like what exactly goes into an audit?
They can either spend 20 minutes delivering a part of their talk or talking through their talk with me. So that's the delivery side. Or the other side is we look at the marketing assets, like how well they show you off as a speaker that you're likely to get booked. And that's what goes on. So 20 minutes, I'll listen and give them feedback if it's a talk, or we'll talk through all their marketing assets. And then for 10 minutes, I give them feedback according to what they said. And then we'll talk about strategy. So that's what the Maximize Your Talk audit is all about. We only really introduced that in the last couple of months, actually since July, because what I was finding more and more, a lot of speakers, when they were going on calls with me, they were mini sessions. I was like, wait a minute, right? It's all very well me doing this, but then they'll go, oh, thanks. So I thought, you know what? There's a lot more. I need to frame this better. So that's where the audit came from. And actually, it's turning to be one of our better sellers because it's very low entry, it's very low risk, it's huge value, and people really like it. Really, really like it.
Mm-hmm. And then I feel like if anybody came from listening to this conversation and were to check out the website, they might also see the gig finder, which again, something cool that I don't see much of.
Gig getters.
Sorry, say it again. Did you say getter?
Gig getters.
Getter. Okay,
yeah.
my apologies. I wrote it as finder.
Okay,
I guess
don't
is
worry.
my own reframing of it.
Different brands.
Yeah. I guess I'd also like to just personally even come away with an understanding of how this functions, because I think people might go into it with certain expectations, like, oh, a moneymaker. So what exactly is the way this works?
It's very simple. It's an alert service, right? So what you do is you can either pay a monthly fee, which is very low. It's like £9.99, which is probably like $300. No, I'm kidding. It's more like about $12, $13.
Okay.
If I go US dollars, it's around $12, right? I don't know Canadian what the difference is.
15,
a month,
16.
there you go. So, or what we're offering right now is a lifetime for £97. It's like 120 US dollars, roughly, right? And what that means is pretty much every day you get an email with speaking opportunities from the UK, from the USA or Canada, and Middle East. So and Europe. So we make sure we're covering, of course, it depends what's out there, but it's pretty global. And every day you get between 2 to 5 speaking opportunities. And they're just emailed to your inbox. That's what the Gig Getters alert service is. And then at the end of the month, at the end of the week, you get a summary of all the emails we sent out. Some are paid, some are unpaid, some won't tell us if they're paid or unpaid. I do have a girl that sits there and her job is to email every speaking opportunity to find out if they pay or not. We're at the mercy of them letting us know. We're not in the position now. Like when this gets to 1,000 speakers on my book, I'm like, look, I got 1,000 people that potentially could be your speakers. Let us know if this paid. I'll have a bit more muscle for them to go, yeah, sure, it is paid. Can you send this to your list? There's a bit more gravitas there. But for now, we're dependent on them responding. So that's the alert service. We did have a done for you service where we took care of the whole administration side. We would reach out, we do the emails, we do the application, we do everything. And we just found that's a very hard service to fulfill, especially when you're dealing with speakers and speakers want results quickly. And also there's so many factors that could go against them. So we just decided to pause the actual done for you service and just focus on the alert service. And that's what that's about. So the gig getters alert service is that. And we have people in Japan, we have people in Australia, we've got people in the US, we have people in the UK all signed up to it because they're always looking for speaking opportunities. But if you think you're gonna land one on your lap, don't sign up because I can't guarantee that.
Exactly why I wanted to ask, just because like I'm looking at that and going, interesting. And but I will say that the value offer for that, for like a lifetime's worth of opportunities, and I if I were putting myself in that position, which I temporarily considered, it's just a matter of like unpaid opportunities are actually a great way just to gain that initial experience. Same idea, doing student films, doing amateur night, whatever the comparison is yeah, by all means do these at cost, do these at a loss, because while it might look like a loss on paper, the enrichment and the experience that you're getting is way more valuable anyways, and builds up that confidence to start going towards gigs where you do want to start asking for compensation. So I'm totally on board with all of that.
But you also can, if you're clever, you can sell. Even if you're
True.
not
Yeah.
selling, you're selling, right? So even if you get up in front of people, you can still sell. People like your talk. You can have business conversations. So I'm not opposed to. I mean, I like to get paid, but I like if someone goes, "Look, we can't pay you, but I can sell." I don't mind that. Often I can make more money than the fee anyway. So
Hmm.
I think it's about being a hybrid speaker these days. That you have to be okay with not selling. I mean, with not getting paid, but being able to sell. But there are pure speakers like, no, I just get paid. I just get paid, and that's fine. Equally, there's people just speak to sell. Period.
Yeah, and I mean I can understand whether it's in a whether they're coming at it from like an artistic point of view, or just feel that it's a there's only so much that a person can develop their skill or their craft. Some people just might not feel like they want to sell. And I think this gets
Right.
back into the
Absolutely.
authenticity theme, which I wanted to make sure we got back to, which is also like, I don't feel like if I go up there and speak, I don't want to feel like I'm selling something. I just want to do the pure speaking.
Yeah. Absolutely. It depends who you want to be as a speaker and what you want to be as a speaker, right? And I think that's key. So you don't
Hmm.
have to sell. You don't have to get paid, right?
Yeah.
It really does depend. I think a lot of people would prefer to get paid to speak.
So, getting back into the, because we're closing in on the hour mark for this episode. So, what I wanted to ask you, getting back into the big theme of authenticity. So, at one point you were known as the hat guy, and then maybe there was something in the middle you didn't tell me about, and then there was the be a giraffe, and so you've gone through some pivots, and you're telling me that there's going to be another one. Maybe it'll happen before this episode releases. Maybe it'll take a year. I'm not totally sure, but do you feel like that is a response to wanting to continue to be authentic, or do you feel like there is a challenge to maintaining authenticity? It's like, well, if you're not this anymore, were you ever that in the first place? Or just like finding that relationship between how you continue to rebrand yourself and making sure that it comes across as authentic.
I think part of the rebrand and the evolution is part of authenticity. So if you look at artists like Madonna, right, how many times she reinvented herself because she'd evolved as an artist, right, and therefore she moved into different. Same with David Bowie. I mean, I'm using them because they're most externally you can see their evolution,
Hmm.
but again, you look at a lot of artists and their music evolves, and their brand slightly changes. I mean, obviously, there's the likes of Pantera that started off in glam rock and ended up in hard rock because they evolved and their brand evolved. So for me, it's authentic to go and look at, am I congruent with this? Is this authentically me right now? And part of the reason I said about moving away from giraffe is I feel like it served me and now I've grown from it. So to be authentic, I need to, and I want to move away, or I need to rebrand, and there will be a rebrand. And that's also because Speaker Express has been around now for 12 years as Speaker Express, and it needs an injection, it needs a new feel, it needs something new to it to be authentic to where we are now, right? And I think that's the key. I think if you're rebranding because something's not working and you haven't grown and evolved, then you can rebrand because you want to attract a different demographic, a different market. There's nothing wrong with that. For me, it's about being authentically true to where I am. So when I stopped being the coach with a hat, it's because I wanted to start attracting more corporate clients. I wanted to be taken that more seriously. It wasn't I wasn't taken seriously, but I'd attract a very specific type of person. But I wanted to open it. So I got rid of the coach with a hat. I rebranded, became Elliot Kay or Strategic Brilliance. So there's nothing in the middle. You haven't missed anything. I guess I was part of Pony Express that got rebranded to Speaker Express. So there's been a theme of animals or things along the way. So for me, it's about really looking and reevaluating where you are and are you in line with the brand you're representing? And if the answer is no, then it's time to rebrand.
And then just to have a little bit more airtime for the relationship between selling and speaking, maybe this entails a specific client that you worked with, which would be cool to be that specific about it, is how to, I guess, talk somebody into selling and being okay with selling. Because I think once you get into trying to make money off something, it can seem incongruous with what a person wants to accomplish out there. So how do you kind of help people deal with, like, look, how do you really sell authentically, I suppose, is the follow-up question to it.
Well, I think first thing you have to understand is speaking is selling. Whether you get paid to speak or you speak to sell, the moment you stand on stage, you're selling, right? Period. You're selling your message, your voice, your brand, what you stand for, your service. You're selling. So I think people that kind of go, oh, I hate selling, but I want to be a speaker. Well, there's a disconnect because you're selling. Also, you need to sell yourself to get the booking. So you're always selling. Let's not pretend otherwise, right? I think in terms of the type of speaker you want to be, so we work on structures, right? There's certain structures you use. So when you're speaking to sell, use a certain structure. And when you're doing a keynote, use a different structure. And the content's slightly different, right? One magnifies the what you need to know, therefore they'll buy from you. And the other one gives away the how because you're being paid. So for me, it's about who does that speaker want to be and how much stage time they want. Because unless they're like a former Olympian or something like that, even former Olympians I work with don't always get the gig, right? They just don't. So it's not about convincing, it's about magnifying authenticity. So within the structure, you can still sell in a way that's authentic to you. So you don't have to use scarcity tactics and you don't have to pretend or price drop. And all the things that I know people that don't like selling are like, oh, that's icky. Invite people to a call. Make the call to action very simple. And then the selling happens on a call. But if you're doing 1,000 people, you're not going to invite people onto a call. Right? So then you have a low entry way of getting them in. So it's just understanding, to answer your question about authentically selling, understanding that sales is a natural progression of the process. Right? It's just the next step. Forcing people to do things is inauthentic, right? Making people buy something that you're not going to deliver, that's inauthentic or that's incongruent. Or in fact, that's just dodgy, right? But just getting people to go, hey, come on to the next level with me. Let's go to the next level. That's part of your responsibility, especially in the coaching space, especially in the speaking space, right? You wouldn't spend the time trying to this beautiful ideal partner, man, woman, or non-binary that you're like, wow, this better. You wouldn't go, can I have your number? You wouldn't go, do you want to come home with me? You would go, thanks, bye. Well, they're like, wait a minute, what did I just do with this person? And they'll turn to the next person and go, do you want to come home with me? Right? Oh, I don't know. Right? Just speculative speaking. It's the same. It's like you have a service that's to solve a problem. When you speak, your responsibility is to bring that person to help them solve that problem. And that's where you sell from. That's the authentic selling space.
I just flashed back to this video that I had seen on TikTok. I know I'm saying that with some venom, but I do actually like the platform. And this guy, he's going around an anime convention. He's asking for a bunch of girls' numbers. And after like 100 tries, he actually did end up getting a number. So like even in the most like direct way, at volume, you might be able to succeed, but not everybody has that in them to do that. So it is also, I think, about tailoring your pitch to a way that you're happy with doing.
Absolutely. 100%. Because if you do force people or come at people straight at them, then they shut down. Like that person, 100 and he got one number, right? Versus build rapport, win trust, they might probably got more numbers.
Yeah. So just because we're very close to wrapping this episode up, one thing that we always like to learn a little about in terms of how you see things going forward. I know we did talk we did an above average amount of just talking about where you see the things going. So what would you say are some of the challenges that your platform is facing? And if you want to answer this on a technical level, that tends to be the trend. So if these things like, man, I wish I was ranking higher, or I wish our YouTube stuff got a little bit more traction, or just what do you feel like is the things that your platform is working on right now?
The biggest challenge facing the industry, I would say, is people don't see speaking as a necessity, even though it's one of your strongest ways to market yourself, to extend your brand, and to win business. The perception is it's a dream, it's a nice to do it, and that's what we're against. And I felt we're against it with the pandemic, but even more now, especially in the UK, cost of living, lots of stuff is going on. I mean, that's global, but really feeling it is that it's really dropped in people's priorities. And so that's the challenge. I'm not fussed about ranking or this or that, right? That'll be nice, but actually it's re-elevating the power of speaking so people are utilizing the services more. That's the biggest challenge right now.
Okay. I appreciate that answer, and I just want to support it before I close this out. Acting tends to be regarded as an elitist profession, and I can see why, because you see Hollywood and you see the best of the best. They live glamorously, and the cameras are always on them, both on screen, but also outside of that. Maybe also they got their own social media page as well. But really, like, in order for acting to be authentic, the performance have to come from everywhere and from every lived experience. And whether, like, for instance, one TV show that is still regarded as one of the best was The Wire, because the actors that they got for that, you really got the sense that those people really lived that experience, and it was very close to feeling like just watching something happening as if we were out a window and seeing it for real. And in the same way that speaking is something that is foundational to our ability to live our lives, acting is the same thing. Even if I just like talk to the different people who live in this house, my persona changes just enough to make sure that I'm accurately communicating with that other person. So being ourselves is a matter of taking all of these different versions of ourselves that we are and figuring out, I guess, what is the median average of it. But these things, I agree with you. Like they're just taken for granted. It's something that we do so much of, we forget how important they really are in context.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Thank you. I'm happy to give you the floor once more in case there was any like points or reactions or observations you wanted to make as a result of this episode. Feel free to share. And then otherwise, remind the audience whereabouts they can find you.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a very interesting conversation. It's not often I
Glad to hear. I try hard.
Yeah, no, it's very good, to talk about comedy, and we've talked about dancing. We talked about, the fulfillment of the performance world. So stuff that I haven't normally, or I wouldn't normally discuss. So it's been great. I think in terms of where to connect with me, the only real platform I'm active on is on LinkedIn. Elliot Kay, spelled the proper way, ELLIOT, one T and KAY, no E, right? So if you put that in, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please add me. Got any questions, send me a message. And then speakexpress.co.uk to find out about all these other things that we've discussed today, such as the audits and the alerts. But, if you want to kind of get the content I put out there, LinkedIn, pretty much every day I'll post something, sometimes twice a day, because I have no life. And then you can, feel free to connect with there. I think that's the best platform. That's the best place. I really am not active on anywhere else because I just don't have the capacity or the desire. But now, actually, I've downloaded this new piece of software that's tempting me back to TikTok because I don't really need to post. I can just connect it and then post it. So anyway, there we go. That's the places.
All right. Well, thank you for all of that, and thank you for this conversation as well. Every one of them illuminates things in a different way, and I think just drilling back into that earnestness and really just the idea of like, yeah, I mean, everything comes back to selling. It's important to disconnect the idea of like selling is not one-to-one with I am trying to take your money. It's also a matter of like, I'm offering value, I'm looking for value in exchange, and the more value we provide, the more we elevate the bedrock of our lived experience. So that's been my major takeaway from the episode. And yeah, if I haven't said thank you a dozen times, I'll be sure to try to get a dozen more between now and the end of the episode. But thank you to you and to my audience, as always, for your participation. I'm so fortunate to be doing what I do. And this has been the Impactful Coaching Podcast. You can email Joseph at impactfulcoachingpodcast.com. It is spelled the way you think. Feedback, questions, reactions, or if you're a coach yourself and you want to have a hand at the episode, we'd be happy to hear from you. So our endeavor is to make sure that in whatever way you are helping others, we want you to be impactful while you're at it.